Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting...
For the cities of gold. Wishing for the cities of gold. Someday we will find the cities of gold. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Cities of gold. Cities of gold. Someday we will find the cities of gold.
It is the 21st century. Nerds from all over the internet gather to discuss ancient pop culture. They seek to follow the path to the setting sun that leads to El Dorado and to likes, rates, and subscribes. Today, we are talking about the mysterious Cities of Gold, a cartoon that I hope some of you remember because I personally think this is really a great one. I have a lot of fond memories of it. But we won't be doing it alone. I have my magic medallion, and I brought someone with their medallion as well. He is the host of the aptly named Rob the Wonderful YouTube network and series of shows. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Robert Palmieri.
Hey, I was supposed to bring a medallion? Uh-oh.
Shit, that unlocks everything. We need the medallion.
I think my dog took it. We'll get it back later.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, Rob, as always, when I have a guest on to talk about a particular topic, I want to know how you found this one. Was this one you watched contemporaneously when it was on, or something you came to later?
Mysterious Cities of Gold. It was one that I vaguely remembered because it was so long ago and I was very young when I first saw it on Nickelodeon, and I remembered liking it, but of course, at the time you only caught like a couple episodes and there wasn't a lot of context. But I remember liking what I saw, and I definitely remember that theme song because that theme song is legendary. But it wasn't until many years later that I got the series on DVD and I watched it, and I was kind of amazed at how good it was.
Yeah, this one's really interesting because it's from a strata of cartoons and a couple of different producers of cartoons that are, to put it mildly, kind of known for just pumping out schlock during the early
That's French
80s.
for you.
Yeah, and this one is not. This one has a lot more going on with it. I think the animation is more sophisticated for the most part than cartoons of this vintage, and the subject matter is interesting, and it's also serialized. It's not like you said you caught a couple of episodes, which meant that they were all out of context and out of order, and you need to see all 39 together to make sense of the story.
Pretty much, yeah. You didn't really see a lot of that back in the day. It was all toy commercials, the cartoon, and there wasn't a whole lot of focus on things like story or narrative, and it was just kind of like what's today's adventure. But seeing a show from way back then actually have a linear storyline that you need to watch every episode for was kind of a rare thing.
Very rare. Like I remember being really captivated by that, and I remember watching this when it was on Nickelodeon, which I think it originally was produced in 82, 83, and then hit Nickelodeon in 86. So I would have been 6 years old at the time. I remember it was on real early in the morning. It was like 6 or 6:30, and like I had to be up to watch it. And I was always excited to see it. And I remember doing the mental math to try and go like, okay, wait, what happened in the last episode? Where are we in the timeline? What trying to sort of do this jigsaw puzzle with it to figure out where everything went.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, the premise is pretty simple. It's basically a treasure hunt. But
yeah.
I mean, you can kind of piece things together fairly easily. But a lot of the more nuanced stuff like the character things and stuff like that was a little bit harder. But it's nice that we're, it eventually got released on DVD and we can revisit and catch all the stuff we missed in between.
Yeah, I remember when file sharing became a big deal in the early 2000s. I somehow got my hands on probably like .avi files of all of these episodes and watched them in college, and when like just to have this like fun nostalgia trip to watch it. It was like, oh man, this is really good. I remember all these beats. Yeah, there's the temple with the jade mask in it. I remember, all these little parts of the show. I guess for people who haven't watched it, we should probably lay out what the premise actually is of the show.
Sure.
Go for it.
Well, it is based on a novel, but it has very, very little to do with a novel. It's called The King's Fifth, which, by the way, apparently there are a lot of people that are hardcore fans of the novel that hate the show because it's so out there. Essentially, it's at its core, it's about Spanish explorers colonizing the South American continent and hearing about treasure and gold, and there's supposedly a El Dorado, they call it, although I don't know if it's supposed to be El Dorado, but they do call it El Dorado in the show. And supposedly it's a city made of gold, and people are trying to find it. And there's a young boy named Sebastian who is an orphan who had a medallion that is supposedly connected to it. And along the way, they bring along a girl who is a native of South America who has the other medallion that is connected to that as well. And he's joined by Mendoza, the great epic Mendoza who punches sharks. That's one of the things I regret about my review, because I left that part out. There's a part where they get attacked by sharks and he straight up punches one.
He's an amazing badass.
He is.
He is a character that at first you never fully know if you can trust him for most of the show. But he is he's ostensibly the navigator on the ship, but he's also an expert swordsman and shark puncher, as you said, and kind of whatever. You know what it is? He is obviously the father figure throughout the show, and he kind of reminds me of that thing like when you're a kid, your dad seems like a fucking wizard. The dads can do anything. That's just what they do. You ask dad to do stuff, and he does it. And here, that's exactly what Mendoza is. Like whatever needs doing, Mendoza can handle it.
Absolutely, and he is one of those characters where you kind of don't know where he stands, because there are parts of the series where he kind of like betrays the kids, but then he goes back to get them back, and eventually he kind of comes around to liking them. But anyway, they travel to South America. They meet another boy who is it's Tao, who his bit is kind of complicated because they changed a few things from the English version. In the English version, he's from a people called the Hiva, which I think implies he's Polynesian. But in the original version, he's from a place called Mu, which is a very similar thing to Atlantis, but for the Pacific Ocean. And he kind of acts as their guide. Like, he translates things for them and shows them around. And they're also accompanied by the two comic relief characters.
Sancho and Pedro.
Sancho and Pedro, yeah. Who are basically there to fall through roofs and be chased by animals and just be funny.
I didn't rewatch the entire series. I watched a handful of episodes to kind of brush up for today, and it was like, they're more insufferable than I remember. I remember being okay with them as a kid, but they're a little much because their obsession with gold is like, okay, not every place you go to or every person you talk to is going to be El Dorado.
Yeah.
But what I really like about kind of the setting here, I grew up in Southern California. That's where I'm from. And so obviously wherever you're from, you get the history of the place you grew up in is a little more prevalent. So here, this is a place that was, conquered by the Spanish, and, it was sort of, the characters never make it as far north as the continental United States. They're mostly in South America and Central America and Mexico. But you definitely you get a bit of that sense of the history of the conquistadors in your bones growing up around here. And
I'm originally from New York, so we have that. I have that history.
Yeah, they don't. I want to say the show doesn't get dark. Like, it's still for kids, but I think they don't pull too many punches with regards to the fact that this is a time of just ethnic cleansing and just a very
Pretty
horrendous
much.
part of our history.
There is a part where they imply genocide at one point.
Well, they actually meet. I think they meet both Pizarro and Cortez during their adventure, and they're both portrayed as like, yeah, these are scary people not to be fucked with. Like, they're real dangerous.
Definitely, yeah.
They're not the cartoon. I mean, they do meet plenty of cartoon villains, but those two are, appropriately scary.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the show does have a nice balance of like adult, mature themes, but also like kind of lighthearted fun because again, it's supposed to be a show for kids. So, they are eventually they're chased by that one guy who's trying to get them, but he always gets kind of dispatched comedically. Like he gets washed away by the ocean or he falls down a ladder and things like so it's nice to have like little levity moments like that when they're, talking about Spanish conquering South America.
Yeah, they're sort of like almost dancing between the raindrops with the main characters sort of working their way north, sometimes with the indigenous people and other times kind of working their way with the Spanish conquerors and just sort of making their way through this conflict without sort of really being too affected by it. Although occasionally they do try to help the natives where they can.
Yeah. Yeah, they do that quite a bit because they also show some conflict between the natives as well. Sometimes, like I remember there was an episode where like some other tribe was attacking and they were like giants. They were quote unquote giants. I think that was the episode where Tao builds the submarine out of sticks. Which Tao's kind of awesome like that.
He is descended from, as you said, these sort of Atlantis-like people, and so once in a while he'll show this flair for engineering that goes with this sort of not ancient aliens, but like this. There was once this ancient advanced civilization that is gone.
Yeah,
and they start layering
toward the end of the show. Definitely, they go into that.
The sci-fi kind of ramps up as they go. Yeah, but even still, like it starts off with them. They'll go into temples and things, and it's very Indiana Jones, right? They pick up a thing, they set off a booby trap, they have to avoid it. Stuff that, like me as a kid who loved Raiders of the Lost Ark, I was like, "Yep,
absolutely,
right up my alley."
I think I felt the same way too because I loved Indiana Jones and seeing puzzle solving inside of an ancient temple that's just inherently cool for me.
Well, I think about like all the stuff in that genre. Like I think it doesn't necessarily start at Indiana Jones, but for our generation, essentially it does. You get like Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's this. Then you get things like Legends of the Hidden Temple. Also for kids, and then you start seeing things that end up being homages to those things. So like the first game in the Uncharted franchise is about the hunt for El Dorado.
And now we have escape rooms. We can just go do it ourselves if we want.
That's right. But again, the escape rooms go from like the Stone Age to the sci-fi by the end of it, where things start to get I won't say they go off the rails, but it goes to a place that you don't expect it to go.
Yeah, well, it's basically the same principle. You got to use your brain to get out.
And it's usually the kids who solve the puzzles, which I like. You make them ultra heroic while the adults are they're there to like punch the bigger grown-ups, but they're not going to solve the case of the missing city of gold.
Nope.
Do you have like a moment in the series that like some of your favorites or?
Well, it has been a while since I've seen it, but I do remember quite a bit of it because it is a show that kind of sticks with you, which is another check mark towards it. I love the part where they find the condor, and it's just this awesome moment. It's like they found this ancient flying machine, and it's made of gold, and it's really cool, and the kids get to pilot it.
The Condor is amazing. We should talk about, the Solaris and the Condor, which are the two main vehicles in the show. They go from one to the other, but these are, ancient leftovers from this forgotten empire that are solar-powered. Like the ship is almost like, well, they're both they're not on automatic pilot all the time, but there's all kinds of things that they can do that ships would not be able to do. So, like, the Solaris has that Archimedes death ray. That just burn stuff up. But the Condor too is
it's a very iconic part of the show.
Yeah, and the animation on the Condor is so cool. The art, like this is a company known for doing you've got Deke producing it along with Saban, and like both companies are known for things like G.I. Joe stuff like on that level. And here, like, I think the animation on the Condor, like the design of it is just so much it's far and above what they usually do.
Yeah, definitely.
It also like guides them places as well. Like I remember there's parts where all of a sudden it's just like, okay, the Condor's taken over. It's telling them where to go. They can't control it. And there's this nice like push pull where it's like, it's not just this like magic vehicle that lets them do whatever they want. They're never fully sure of how all of it works. And that kind of, I just sort of like that sort of neat tension in there that it's like, it's not 100% reliable.
Yeah. It falls into that whole bit of like discovery and adventure, and that, the whole Indiana Jones aspect where they find something weird and they have to figure it out.
It's pretty much everywhere they go, but they do a good job of doing that with not just like the places, but the people, where they spend a lot of time with the Incas and the Aztecs, obviously, but, when they encounter a group, you don't know if you can trust them. There's that interesting episode where you have this ritual where a guy covers himself in gold dust and walks into a lake, which is believed to be the origin of the El Dorado myth itself in real life, which I really like that piece of like, we're going to use bits of real history and mythology to kind of build out our show. But I love that. It creates this sense of like, again, like wonder and danger, even when they walk, wherever they go, whatever new situation they walk into.
Yeah. I think they talked about that in the after segment where they do the history.
Yeah, we should talk about those. Those are fun.
Yeah, again, those are kind of old. I don't know how accurate they are to this day, but they were interesting to watch. And I felt like I learned something.
Yeah, well, at the end of like of a normal show from that era, like again, G.I. Joe would do this all the time, where it's like, hey kids, don't do drugs. Always look both ways before you cross the street. And it'd be that one little segment. And here it was like actually like a little film strip of real history or culture from Latin America.
It's like an old episode of National Geographic, like I said. But I feel like that is better. Like I always thought that was better than like what He-Man or G.I. Joe did, where they did the PSA and it's like, don't forget to wash your hands or whatever. But in that case, they're educating. They're giving you like facts and history. And that's something you didn't see a whole lot of. Like I said, it was mostly just telling kids to behave and don't talk to strangers and make friends with people. But then you got Mysterious Cities of Gold, who's teaching you about the South American culture, which usually related to the episode you watched. And there's a couple other examples. I know Silverhawks did like a science PSA where they taught about. I did a review on Silverhawks as well, and I talked about this, how they did like a PSA about an education segment where they talked about the galaxy and space and science and stuff like that. And I would have always loved to have seen more of that, because I love that stuff.
Yeah, it made it feel a little more enriching. It almost reminded me of like little segments that might be peppered through something like Sesame Street, but it did tie into the episode you just watched really well. So like that episode I mentioned with the Jade Mask ends with a little segment about Mayan burial rites, where they showed, and here's, this guy who was buried, this leader who's buried in this jade mask, and the mask he's buried in is the same design as the mask in the temple from the cartoon. So they literally show you like, see, we're taking our inspiration from real life. We're putting this in the show. Not to say that the show is otherwise, historically accurate in any shape or form.
Absolutely not.
No, because you eventually meet their version of the Olmecs, which is...
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Definitely not anything like the actual Olmecs, but it's sort of hard to describe them. They're sort of like elf people.
Yeah.
Not exactly.
This is where fans of the original book start raging.
Well, my understanding is, I've never read it, but that the King's Fifth does not have any sci-fi elements.
No, it's just an adventure story, and it has the same base plot where they're traveling to the American continents looking for riches, and I think only Esteban, Zia, and Mendoza are characters from the book, and that's it.
It like in name only.
That's where it ends.
Yeah. The Olmecs are... I'm trying to remember what their like the wiki entry on them would be. They're not descendants of Mu or Hiva, but they're like mutated by the war. They're I know they're like
something
steroid.
Like that. Like when I first watched it, I thought they were aliens, like straight up aliens that were there, because they seem like old timey like aliens you'd see in like a black and white show, like on the Twilight Zone, where they have it's just a guy with a big head, you know. And I think I heard something about like originally they were supposed to be, but I can't confirm that at the moment. It was just so jarring and different to see it after being like, okay, we're fighting the Spaniards, we're helping the tribes, and then suddenly these weird dudes from underground with giant eyes and heads with a spaceship show up, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, they're like, as I seem to recall, they're not immortal, but they've like unlocked. They're older than they should be. They've used technology to keep themselves alive.
They've extended their lifespan somehow.
Yeah, but they're also, I believe, they're sterile. Right? There's something about they have to reproduce with machines. They clone themselves or something. It's real. And I believe this is all meant to tie back to the kind of the big reveal about the war between Hiva and Atlantis. That's the starting point for the whole story. That when they finally find the City of Gold, they learn the backstory that these two civilizations went to war and destroyed each other with the power of the sun, which heretofore, like, all the power of the sun stuff was literally like solar powered stuff. But then they sort of merged that with the idea of like, no, it's like nuclear fusion power. It's actual sun power. And I love that segment. It's really well animated and kind of out there, but it's evocative and cool. When they show you the war. Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, I also like that they do the kind of the classic, I am your father stuff with having, Esteban be on the search for his true father, who is the masked high priest of the City of Gold. And
yeah, he believed he was dead, but then we find out late. Major spoilers, by the way. But at the end of the show, we find out he's alive, and he helps them at the very end of the series, or the very end of the season, actually, I should say now.
Well, and they also have that bit with the jar, which carries through the entire thing. That Tao is carrying this his last keepsake of this empire he's descended from, which is this jar that supposedly no one can open. That turns out to basically be a big cooling rod.
The big MacGuffin. They had it this whole time.
Like, I think he just hands it off to the high priest or whatever, and he knows what to do with it. He has to like go into the melting down core of the city and put this thing in so the world won't be exploded.
Yeah.
Again, exactly.
That was that was a very like a very dramatic moment too. Like he kind of and they drag it out, like he slowly walked down there, and you got to see like every moment of him going toward this thing, knowing it was probably going to kill him. Yeah,
they made it. I won't say they made it gruesome, but it's like they let you know that like he's walking into Chernobyl, like he is.
Yep.
This is it for him, as he sacrifices himself to stick this jar into this machine to stop it from melting down the world. But it does destroy the city, of course. But
yeah, they've that was the whole conclusion of the show. They reached the City of Gold, and then it ends up getting destroyed.
But the real treasure was the friends we met along the way.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. We didn't mention Cocopedal. I realize we have to talk about Cocopedal because he's awesome.
I love him.
He's the chubbiest little parrot. He's so cute.
He's so good. He's one of the best things. Like, of all the like 80s animal sidekick characters, he's top tier as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, so many of those animal sidekick characters just had that like blah 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 voice and didn't really do anything useful. They were just meant to be comic relief. But Cocopedal definitely pulls his weight. Like he's basically a drone for them because he can fly. He can he's doing reconnaissance for them. He's warning them of danger. He's really a valued member of the team.
He should have had a plush or something.
He was cool. Yeah, I wanted that condor. That condor is so good.
The condor. I think I remember a couple years ago they made a model of the condor. I don't know if you can still get it. You might maybe on the secondhand market. It's probably gonna cost a lot of money, but I do remember somebody made like a toy condor. Maybe I don't know if it was official or not, but it is definitely out there.
I saw the, or at least somebody is, I'm sure non-licensed and non-official, but was making the medallions.
Well,
the medallions
that happens a lot with a lot of, especially with stuff like robots, Transformers. That they'll make it something that looks like a thing you remember, but it's not. It's legally not. It's
a transmorpher.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to spend a little time talking about the music for this show because, like, this is one of these soundtracks like I'll keep going back to from time to time. It's just a banger. Yeah, done by Haim, Saban, and Shuki Levy, who were a team responsible for a lot of 80s cartoon music.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is probably their best. And I know there was some controversy about how much there were a few people that claimed that they got ripped off, their stuff got ripped off. I don't know if that applies to this particular soundtrack or not, but...
I don't know, but I do really enjoy the not just the intro and the outro, which is always no matter what the show is, that's always going to be the best part, especially from this era. But just the little arrangements in between, because they take the what is essentially the theme song, they alter it to fit the mood of the scene, where it can be like fun and adventurous or like dark and creepy, and it really works.
Yeah, it's this interesting blend because it's like half synthesizer in places, and in other places it's more like South American instrumentation, and the leitmotifs and stuff are blended together really well. And it's one of the things where there's probably like, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 like tracks that they use, but they just know when to deploy those same tracks at plug and play kind of at the right moment. They're really evocative and cool. I'm sure I'll be putting a lot of this into the edit for later. But.
Saban and Shuki Levy were geniuses when it came to TV show themes and soundtracks. Because like you said, they did pretty much name something, and they probably worked on it.
Yeah, the if you go to their Wikipedia entry or whatever and try and look at their list, it's very long, and I guarantee there's something on it. If younger audiences would be they were like into Power Rangers in the 90s, that's them. And they worked on that show as well. Just tons and tons of stuff. But yeah, it adds such a great flavor to this show. Not that it has a lot of like, again, historical authenticity, but the use of all of these like pan flutes and stuff from South America, just again, it adds in that adventure theme. I'm going to different far off places and different lands.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Did you watch any of the sequel series? I think I watched one episode. I need to get back to it, but I was curious about it.
I watched the second season because I talked about it in my video. I know there's 2 more seasons. I would love to get to those at some point. As far as I know, I don't think they're dubbed into English, though, and I don't really know the best way to get to them. But the second season was dubbed into English, and I liked it, but I don't think I liked it as much as the first season, because there were some major changes done. The English dub of the second season has some issues.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and I talked about this in my review again, but the English dub of the original, it wasn't perfect, but the people voicing fit the characters. Whereas in the English dub for the second season, some of them worked and some of them really didn't. Like Esteban and Tao's voice actors sounded very similar, and it got a little bit confusing for me. And Mendoza's voice was like very, very different, and it felt like it just didn't work. And I'm just like, couldn't they have found someone that kind of sounded like them? Yeah. But I mean, I've been told, in situations like that, to just maybe watch the original French dub, because maybe it'll be a little easier to digest.
You just put that out of your head that they don't sound right.
Yeah, they sound very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, the sequel hook was already there in the original show, because they let you know there are 7 cities of gold throughout the world to be found. So it seemed like the plan was to do what they ended up eventually doing in 2012 when they started the new one. Because they go to China, is my understanding, for the second season.
Yeah, second season is China. I think the third season is Japan, and I don't know about the next one.
Well, the show was developed, I think, in Japan and then in connection with the French.
Yeah, it was a collaboration.
Right. And then sort of ported over with Canadian voice actors and then dumped on Nickelodeon. Because at that time, like, when I think most people think of Nickelodeon, they're going to think of, like, you know, Doug and Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life, all this original programming they had. But in the 80s, Nickelodeon was sort of just like whatever they could get their hands on to show. So I remember this being kind of paired up with things like Danger Mouse and Duckula.
Yeah, from the UK. There was a lot of foreign shows during the 80s. Nickelodeon didn't, as far as I'm concerned, didn't really hit its stride until the 90s with the Nicktoons. But and they did have some original programming before that for like Nick Jr. and you know, some of their regular stuff. But back then, when they were kind of desperate to fill, I was actually talking about this with someone recently. Back then, they were kind of desperate to fill their air. They would play old shows, like they had the old black and white Dennis the Menace. They had Flipper, and they had stuff like that. And then they would get stuff from other countries, like Danger Mouse and Duckula from the UK. They had David the Gnome, which I think was from the Netherlands. I think
Sounds right.
I could be wrong about that. And then they had, you know, a couple of French shows. There was Mysterious Cities of Gold, and there was another show that nobody ever talks about. It was called, and I had less memory of this than Mysterious Cities of Gold. It was called Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea, which is quite a title.
Wow, that title! I remember. Maybe it was promos for it or something.
I remember hearing that years ago, and I looked it up, and I was watching the intro for it. By the way, the intro to that show kind of rivals Mysterious Cities of Gold, as far as I'm concerned. It's really good. And I remember there was this lady wearing all white with like a big hat on, and I definitely remember seeing her, but that show didn't really stick with me like Mysterious Cities of Gold did, because I did watch some of it, and it is weird. It's like, it's high. It's very, very out there science fiction.
Is this the one that has some stuff about Arcadia in it, or is that a separate show?
That's Arcadia, yeah.
It's just called
basically
Arcadia.
I'm trying to let me see if I can remember this bonkers show. It's like the distant future. There was some kind of like calamity, some kind of Armageddon happened. Humanity moved to the center of the Earth. They set up a false sun, a fake sun, so that they can get light and energy from it. They apparently de-evolved legs, so they kind of bounce around without legs on. And the sun was going out, so they had to send someone to the surface to try and find someone that can help. So they made this synthetic humanoid, which is the lady in white. I forget what her name is. And they put her in a spaceship with like all their technology, and these two little adorable robot pangolins, which I loved, and sent them out to the surface to find help. And they find other humans, and I think they have. I forget. I'm getting kind of fuzzy after that. Again, the show was weird.
Tale as old as time.
Yeah, it wasn't as it wasn't as again well remembered as Mysterious Cities of Gold. Also, I don't think it had the same like appealing aesthetic did. Like Mysterious Cities of Gold was pretty much the same as a lot of stuff at the time, but this one I think was a little bit of a downgrade in terms of animation and character design. But I think I would love to give that show a chance at some point. It's very hard to find in English. I think a lot of the episodes are on YouTube, but unfortunately I think some of them are in French. But I think it's definitely one worth checking out at some point, just for if at least just for how weird it is,
just for archival purposes.
yeah
You mentioned the we've talked about the theme song here and there. The intro to the show I think is worth spending some time on, because I think, you know, when you know a TV show intro is good when you don't skip it.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, like we did an episode a few back on Batman the Animated Series. Like that's one where like, yeah, I'm gonna watch that same 75
that's
seconds.
That's a badass intro.
Yeah, and this is up there for me as an intro, because first you have the like before the banger theme song kicks in, you have that intro where, you know, they're setting the stage of like it's the 16th century, blah blah blah.
It is the 16th century. From all over Europe, great ships sail west to conquer the new world, the Americas. The men eager to seek their fortune, to find new adventures in new lands. They long to cross uncharted seas and discover unknown countries, to find secret gold on a mountain trail high in the Andes. They dream of following the path of the setting sun that leads to El Dorado and the mysterious cities of gold.
And you're zooming in from like the Milky Way galaxy all the way to the inside of a Mayan temple. And it's this really cool, like, it's fairly quick zoom in. And then during the actual song, they use this animation style that's not used throughout the rest of the show, where they use these kind of, I don't know what you would call it, but they use photographs of real places.
Yeah, like filters over them.
Yeah, they've been heavily processed. It's neat. It adds that air of, like, again, like just a little flavor of authenticity by showing you photographs of real places.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube. I mean, you can find this on YouTube. Go watch it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you're not going to watch the rest of the show, at least watch this, because the song is awesome. You've heard it by now because I put it at the front of the episode. But the song is great. The way they animate that is so cool with, like, the kids. It kind of reminds me of I think there's bits of Yellow Submarine that are animated this way.
Yeah. You know, the theme song is good because they reuse it for the second season. Or they redo it for the second season, but instead of having like a South American feel, it has more of a Chinese feel.
Children of the sun, see your time has just begun. Searching for your ways through adventures every day and night. With the condor in flight, with all your friends in tow, we search for the cities of gold. Wishing for the cities of gold. Someday we will find the cities of gold. Cities of gold. Children
Yeah,
But it's essentially the same song. They basically just repurposed it, and it still sounds great.
Yeah, I liked that. I thought that was really a nice touch that they said, okay, if we're going to set it in China, we will kind of redo it and use Chinese instruments and, to give it that flair. You've got that cool shot of, like, yeah, I think you mentioned this in your video, like, you've got the condor flying alongside a giant red Chinese dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's cultural appropriation correctly done. Yeah, so I just kind of rounding in here towards the end of things, but what do you think it is about this show, that makes people kind of, because I know that it has like a very strong following of people that just fell in love with it in the 80s and never stopped loving it, which makes it perfect for a show like this. What do you think it is about this show that makes people glom onto it that way?
We've kind of already touched on this, but it's a very unique specimen. Like it's got a linear story. It has mature themes in it, but it's managed to balance it out with some, childish, lighthearted fun, and it's got adventure. It has everything you could possibly want, honestly. And considering, sometimes people kind of give they're kind of like, 80s cartoons are like, whatever, but then you have like this is which is like the exception to the rule, which is a show that not only is really good but held up exceptionally well and isn't there to shill a product.
That's interesting about it too. You mentioned that, like we were talking about, if only there was a Coca Pedal plushie around, or a condor, a plastic condor toy I could get. And you think about, by this point we had already had Star Wars, like the concept of merchandising an IP.
Oh yeah.
To hell and back. It was, you look at the other cartoons that this was produced alongside, where, like, yeah, Transformers, Masters of the Universe, like, this is just to sell you toys. And here they didn't do that. It seems like they said, we stand by the art of this thing. We don't need to commercialize it as much as humanly possible.
Yeah. I wish more things would do that.
Yeah. Well, fair point. I really just, I think this thing has endured the way it has amongst the people who even know about it. And I realize this is not an episode of the show where people are going to be like, oh shit, they're doing Mysterious Cities of Gold. But it certainly felt that, like, this is one, I've wanted to do since I conceived of doing a show about going back to these nostalgic things, because this one has always sort of been there for me. Like I said, I rediscovered it in college, and it just, you're right. It is a one of a kind thing. Like it is such an odd show from this era that does so many things well. It balances a lot of things tonally that shouldn't work together, and yet they kind of manage to keep it all feeling of a piece, where like it doesn't veer too far into like the blood and guts of the conquest. It doesn't veer too far for the most part into just being silly. It's like, this is an adventure, and it's going to be just a little more mature than you are as a kid when you encounter it, to make you feel like, oh, it's a little dangerous.
So like I said, I think in my review I said something like it takes its audience seriously.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It doesn't baby you in any way. It just sort of says like, you're coming along on this adventure ride, and it absolutely delivers on that on every front. So Rob, any other kind of closing thoughts on Mysterious Cities of Gold?
Other than if you've not seen it, track it down and watch it. It is a treat.
Yeah, the first season at least is on Amazon Prime. You can buy it there and stream the whole thing, which is how I have it. I've tried to get my kids to watch it. They're not quite into it yet. I think they're not the right ages for it, but
give it some time.
Yeah, I want them to, because that's what being a parent is about, right? Is shoving the things you like down their throats.
Hey, maybe they'll like it.
I hope so.
You can like Mysterious Seas of Gold and Bluey at the same time.
Bluey's pretty awesome.
I've heard my friend has kids, and he won't stop raving about that.
It's one of those shows where, like, again, it also doesn't baby you. It is clearly for kids. Like, it's easy for them to glom onto, but you watch all the things the parents go through on that show, and you're like, I relate to this. I know
yeah,
what they're doing.
I mean, I heard many people rave about it. I ended up checking out a little bit of it on YouTube, and I can kind of see that it is a very well written show. So I see why it's so appealing.
I think it's very well observed in terms of what it's like to be both a parent and a kid. They get both perspectives really well. Rob, if people want to find your stuff, where are they going to find it?
Well, I am Rob the Wonderful on YouTube. That is also my Twitter handle as well as my Twitch handle. I do stream games, although that's a completely different world as far as I'm concerned.
Did you ever, before we go there, actually, did you play the Mysterious Cities of Gold game?
The one for the DS?
Oh, there was a second one? I think there was an iOS one.
Oh, there was. I remember
Maybe
there was
the
one
same
on the
one.
3DS, which I think came out with the second season. It was kind of a puzzle game where you control the three kids and they have to like get to different places. So if that sounds familiar, then I guess they ported it to the DS as well. I did play a little bit of it. It was kind of a fun little thing.
It felt like a fun curiosity. I didn't get absorbed by it or anything, but it was neat that someone bothered to do it. But anyway, yes. I interrupted you promoting yourself, which I absolutely want you to do, so please go.
It's okay. It's Rob the Wonderful on YouTube again. I do a show called Cartoon Clip Show, where I review usually cartoons that I am familiar with, that I grew up with, but I've been known to take on just about anything. And again, that's also my Twitter handle. I stream on Twitch, Rob the Wonderful again. If anybody out there is a gamer, they want to come check me out. There's also, I have other channels too. I have a toy channel, and I upload my gaming stuff to my gaming channel. You can find links to those on my main channel. I also have an Instagram, Rob the Wonderful, where I have been posting my VHS collection. People seem to be liking them.
Well, cool. So, I encourage everybody to go check that out. Rob, I stumbled onto you looking while I was doing research for this episode, and I think you just got a really great collection of interesting stuff. So please, everyone, go check that out. If you like this show, of course, you know what to do when you hear a podcast you like. You go and you like, rate, subscribe, tell people about it, drop a review. Those are all helpful things. We are on Twitter at NostalgiumPod, and we're also on Instagram at NostalgiumArcanum. We've got some really cool stuff coming down the pike. We've got episodes. We're recording way too many this week, but we're doing Saved by the Bell. We're going to do Masters of the Universe, the movie, not the cartoon.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice.
We got that one. We've got DuckTales coming up. And what else? Oh, my so-called life we're going to do. So I've got lots of irons in the fire and cool shit coming in the next few weeks. So thanks again, Rob. Really appreciate you coming on.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Glad to. And until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcana.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.